Yeah, so welcome everybody. Just give us a couple minutes and then I'll kick it to your fearless leader, Matthew, with some opening remarks. I think he has some comments, some announcements in terms of what you guys are all dealing with right now. So he can get us started and then I'll take it away the best I can.
Great. We're filling up. This is good. We're seeing some folks and we thank you for coming. And I'd like to welcome Matt Carpenter, who's been working with us for quite a number of years, I guess. How long would you figure it was, Matt?
I was trying to think about that. I bet we're bumping up. We're over a decade. I bet we're closer to 15 than 10. Let's put it that way. I was somewhere in there.
Yep. So we've appreciated hearing over the years, sage financial advice, sound financial advice, some larger questions connected to thinking about college. It's a piece that we admittedly don't know enough about as parents. And, I would say even, your typical public high school counselor, myself included, we know some things, we hear things, but it's not really till you're the parent of the kid really thinking about putting things together that you need to hear, you need to hear some more specifics about finance. And that's why we bring in, partnerships that we've had over the years to try to bring, experts into the mix to let us know what we need to know. We do have resources that we share out with our parents regularly. We have college application and college search resources, and certainly we'll throw out any local scholarships, financial aid information. Our own state's association will send, or I should say authority will send that out to you to try to get the information you can. But there's nothing like hearing what people boots on the ground are working with families as they try to make the ends meet, try to make the dreams happen. And this is a tougher part of the conversation because it's reality sets in when you start looking at the pocketbook. And so we've been very appreciative to have Matt and his team join us. He's got some things to share with us tonight, as well as a potential opportunity that could be there for parents if they want to pursue it a little further through his organization as well. But again, we welcome our parents. You have friends who couldn't make it. I believe Matt is recording this, so we'd hopefully still push it out so that people have this as a resource they could go back to in the future too. So thanks.
Yeah, man. It's, always once upon a time, we used to do this in the beautiful big auditoriums that you all have there in the Demhurst, and so Old Japan's the other location, right? So, and we used to get to tour the local establishment. So hopefully that'll be there again. I mean, the nice advantage I think of this setting is, number one, it'll be recorded. So if you're kind of dipping in and out, we'll send you the recording tomorrow. We'll send you the slide deck tomorrow and just let you know about any questions that we don't get to tonight. How to interface with us. From just a housekeeping standpoint too, I'll ask you to get interactive a couple times tonight, and you can put those questions in the chat. Otherwise, for your particular questions, please put them in the Q&A because those all get recorded, transcribed. So your peers that couldn't make it tonight, they'll benefit from those questions and the answers. I'm going to do my best to get to as many as I can. I'm not going to get to all of them. Time just won't allow, but we're pretty good at making sure we get them answered at some point. So please continue to engage with us. This is all we do, right? Again, my name is Matt Carpenter. I'm with College Aid Pro. I've been doing this my entire career. It's the only kind of professional language I know. So hopefully I speak it pretty well at this point. And the hope is that, by the time you leave here in an hour, you have a lot better understanding of how this whole thing works. And then more specifically, how do you all fit into this? Where does your family fit in the spectrum? Are you going to be eligible for financial aid? How much? At which colleges? Where can we expect our kids to get merit-based scholarships, right? So yeah, I want to teach you how the whole thing works, but then hopefully boil it down to, how is this going to play out for you? How I like to start, is just, and put this in the chat if you would, but like, what's the stuff that's keeping you up at night? right now? Like, what is like, why are you tuning in tonight? I know this is a lot, right? This is, something I say every day is it's your kids and it's your money. Like, no kidding, you're stressed out and overwhelmed and all of that. But if anybody's open for it, and you can be anonymous, right? But just pop in the chat, oh, you know what? I think I have to enable the chat. Give me a second here and I will do that. But just please put in, again, what's keeping you up at night, so that I can see. Now I should, if somebody could at least give me a test. So either tell me what's keeping you up at night, or at least give me a test so I know. Okay, perfect. The cost. Yep. So, and I see kind of some of the usual suspects coming in here. The money, right? How am I going to pay for this thing? I don't understand. How does this financial aid work? What if I don't get financial aid, but I don't feel like I can afford $80,000 a year, right? What are these schools actually going to cost me? So these are kind of all the usual suspects. These are the questions we get on a daily basis, and we're going to hit at least all the ones that I've seen come through, probably on all of these over the next 50 minutes here. So I appreciate you, being a little bit vulnerable here. I mean, another thing that I try to remind everybody, and of course, easier said than done, but we always poll the families that we work with at the end of the year and say, if you go back in time, if you go back to September, when you first started this process with your senior in high school, right? And now we're September 2024. What advice would you give yourself, having just gone through the gauntlet, right? And 80% of parents say, I would have told myself, do not forget the fact that this is the last year your baby's living under your roof, right? So just for what it's worth, try to keep that front and center. And of course, easier said than done. I of course, I don't live by those words as much as I should. So, I mean, another question we got and we get all the time is, where should I start, right? Where should I start this process? You probably got a note from us before, but what we have you do, and I'd encourage you to do it now if you haven't already, and I'm popping the website in chat as well. So mycap.collegeaidpro.com, you can set up an account. It doesn't cost anything, but the first thing it's going to do, it's going to tell you your EFCs, which I'll talk about in a minute here. It's going to give you net costs at any of the colleges that you're looking at. But it's, when we get the question, where should we start? That's a great place to do it. And again, I put for those of you that haven't created an account so far, I recommend it, because as we're talking tonight from a high level of how this works, that can speak more specifically to how it's going to work for your family, right? And again, arguably most importantly, what are these colleges actually going to cost you? Are you going to get financial aid? How much and where? Okay. So let's zoom out a little bit here, right? What is financial aid? In its simplest terms, it's a discount from the sticker price, right? That's it. And there's a few different ways that we can get discounts. Now, the first two we're highlighting, that's what we're most interested in, because that's free money coming right off the top, right? Need-based grants or need-based financial aid has really everything to do with your family's financial profile, income and assets being the biggest drivers, okay? And then based on the college, how generous or not are they if you're eligible for any amount of financial aid, right? The second way we can get discounts, and again, free money type of deal, are merit-based scholarships, which in some ways is the opposite end of the spectrum, right? Because these are discounts that are given really with nothing to do with your family's financial situation or eligibility for need-based financial aid, everything to do with the student's merit, right? Their credentials, and then the needs of that particular college that we're talking about, right? And that can change from one year to the next and even within the year, okay? And we'll also flag the fact that not every college gives scholarships, okay? And I'll spend some time on that as well. That's important to know. That's an important piece of information, especially if we're a family that's not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid, or not a lot of it, right? And now the last type of financial aid, I put that in quotes here because I think it's, for the most part, it's a sexy term for loans, right? Is what's called self-help financial aid. And this is called financial aid by the colleges. That's a terminology that they use when they send you an offer letter. It will include self-help financial aid, but it's a loan, right? By and large, it's a loan and or a work study, a job the student will have on campus, but it's not coming off the bill, and then obviously in the cases of the loan, that means that we're going to be paying that money back plus interest. Okay. So just from a terminology standpoint, that's where I like to start, right? And we'll spend some more time talking about both types of financial aid specifically. Now, if you've already been into your myCAP account, you've already know, are you going to be eligible for financial aid at particular colleges, need-based financial aid, and how much? But need-based financial aid is where I like to start and spend a little bit more time because it's a little bit more complex. There's more variables. It's more nuanced. There's more rules. There's more gray area. So that's where I like to start. And so that's where we're going to start here. Now, something that I say multiple times a day when I get questions about this whole thing, I'm going to answer it with, it depends on the college. It depends on the college. Depends on the college, right? And that's because it's the truth. Every college is different. You have to look at these colleges like private businesses, right? They're technically nonprofit organizations, but that basically just means they don't pay taxes. Okay, these are very well-oiled machines. Okay, and they each run their businesses a little bit differently. There's different nuances, and there's not a lot of universal rules here. So anytime we have a universal rule, we want to get really comfortable with that. And we have that advantage when it comes to need-based financial aid, because every college uses this basic formula to start to figure out, is your student going to be eligible for need-based financial aid? Okay, and that formula is the cost of attendance. In other words, the sticker price, right? The rack rate, okay? Minus your expected family contribution, EFC, okay? This is essentially a dollar amount that gets assigned to the student that's largely driven by the income and assets of your family. If this dollar amount, if this EFC is lower than the cost of attendance at any particular college, well, now we are potentially eligible for some need-based financial aid, some need-based discounts, right? Now, we use the word potentially here because just because we are technically eligible for need-based financial aid at a college, just because our EFC is lower than their rack rate, it doesn't mean that we're going to get all of that met by the college. We might not get any of it. We might not get some of it, and or we might just get some of it, right? And I'm going to get into specific examples, but this is the high-level formula for how a college, every college, will determine a student's eligibility for financial aid. And now we're going to kind of get into some of the nuances of each of those, or I will in a couple of minutes. We'll kind of actually look at some case studies. But before we jump there, I want to talk about a couple of things that are important as it pertains to your EFCs. And we really spend, and this is by design, and I think it's when we talk about this process, it's the most savvy way to navigate it. But we spend a lot of time talking about, or probably more time talking about, mistakes that families need to avoid, more so than strategy, right? And that's the case here, and that's kind of where I'm going to focus on this slide. I'm going to talk some strategy here, but what I want to make sure that you all do is avoid the mistakes that quite literally millions of your peers make, and it ends up having them pay for a lot more money for college than they otherwise would have needed to. Okay, and what's considered an asset? This is really Exhibit A here. Okay, this is Exhibit A. And the most common and most critical mistake that parents make is that they report their retirement accounts on these financial aid applications. Okay. If you remember one thing tonight, if you have one, you retain one thing, over this 55 minutes, let it be that you are not going to report the balance of your retirement accounts on the financial aid applications. I cannot say that enough times. FAFSA, when they ask you for the net worth of your savings, investments, assets, do not include your retirement accounts, right? They don't make it clear that you should not be doing that. I'm a little bit cynical here. I wonder sometimes if that's by design, because they do not make it clear. So most families, if I asked you what's your net worth, you would include your retirement accounts, right? Do not include them on the FAFSA. Okay, that's mission critical. You don't have to include them on the CSS profile either. So that's the number one mistake we want to help you avoid. Okay, when it comes to pensions, you leave that out, right? You are not going to include the balance of any type of tax deferred money in there, but they're going to look at, if you receive a pension, it's just considered income, right? It's a part of your taxable income. It's a part of your adjusted gross income. So it will go on there. Okay. Here's another really common, really critical mistake that we want to avoid, right? And before I get there, let me just kind of explain some of the rules of the game here. Parental assets versus student assets. With very few exceptions, just about all colleges consider any money in the student's name, with a lot more emphasis than they do with any money in the parent's name, right? So in other words, even if I got $10,000 in a savings account, right? The student's an industrious kid, they've saved up $10,000 from their bar mitzvah, their first communion, working, whatever, right? And they get $10,000. Even an amount of 10,000 if it's in the student's name, is enough to move the needle in terms of financial aid eligibility to the tune of about $2,500 a year, right? So when we times that by 4, that's $10,000. It's not nothing, right? Whereas if that money's in the parent's name, $10,000, it's not enough to move the needle, right? So even in that example, if we got a savings account, add your name onto it as the parent. If it's not there already, report it as a parental asset, not as a student asset. Now that's a little bit of a segue to the next point here, which is the next, most common, most critical mistake, and that's 529s. 529s, if that doesn't ring a bell to you, you can kind of disregard for the next, 2 minutes here, but it's the most popular investment vehicle when it comes to saving for college. Okay. And intuitively, most parents would expect, most people would expect, and I don't blame them, this is not an indictment on them, that this is the kid's money. It's for college, their name and their social security numbers on the statement, right? Must be their asset. So that's how they report it on the financial aid applications. That's incorrect. If you have a 529, you are the owner as the parent. Okay. The students are just the beneficiary. So it's you cannot make that mistake, because if let's say you have $60,000 in a 529, right? That it's going to be considered if you own that as a parent, right? That's enough. It's going to move the needle a little bit. It's not a massive amount, but it'll move the needle a little bit. But if you report $60,000 in the student's name, you're smoked in terms of need-based financial aid eligibility. So another really kind of mission critical error that we want to avoid if we are the owner of a 529. Okay. Next thing I'm going to skip to here, and we'll spend a little time going over some specific examples. And this is especially a challenge for you all in Bergen County area, right? Same thing for me up here north of Boston. We live in expensive parts of the country. And so for some of us, the equity that we have in our home, if we are homeowners, might be our biggest asset, or at least one of our biggest assets. A lot of these private colleges consider our home equity fair game. Not all of them, and they do to varying degrees. Okay. But for a lot of these popular private colleges, I'll pick on Boston University in my backyard here. They're going to say, if your home's worth 800 and you owe 400 on it, that's $400,000 savings account, right? We expect that $400,000 can be accessed and should be baked into the equation here, right? It's ridiculous, but those are the rules of the game, right? At least at Boston College. And again, of course, it varies school by school, depends on the school. Now, there's a whole bunch of, matter of fact, we do some presentations all around, home equity strategies and property strategies. But one of the ones that anybody can take home is that when you're reporting the value of your home on these financial aid applications, specifically the CSS profile, right? This is a gray area. There's an element that's of it's arbitrary, right? If I'm the buyer, I think I value it at this. If I'm the seller, I'm gonna value it at this. This is a place where we want to be pessimistic, but we got to have something that's at least a little bit defendable here, right? sometimes the assessed value can be lower than maybe the market value, but we can also take whatever that value might be, kind of our starting point, and we can deduct it by 20%. I'm not going to spend too much time on unpacking that, but basically it's an IRS rule that says if you sold your home tomorrow, you wouldn't pocket all of that money, right? You're going to pay X amount in taxes, fees, etc. So it is a strategy that we can use when reporting the value of our home. We can deduct what we think is a reasonable market value, deduct it by 20%, and make that relatively defendable. Okay, so that's, again, one of the many strategies we can implement, but I think is kind of the easiest one to digest. Okay, so income. I just talk about income for a couple of minutes because for me, it is what it is type of deal, right? What your adjusted gross income, whatever it says on those tax returns, not a heck of a lot we can do. Okay, assets there can be a little bit more squishy, and there's some gray area, and there's some strategies that make sense, right? But income, that's the deal, right? And a couple of things to talk on here now. For assuming that a lot of you, many of you are class of 2023 families, okay, there are going to be looking at your 2021 tax returns as what's called your base income year, right? So they use what's called your prior tax year. So when you go to apply for financial aid for sophomore year, they're going to look at 22 returns. When you go to apply for financial aid for junior year, they're looking at 23 returns, so on and so on, right? And if you're an underclassman that's a parent of a class 2025, it's a 23 tax returns that's going to be the foundation for your base income year. Okay. Some commentary on, and I'll spend just a couple minutes at the end talking about, well, what if I had a really wonky year in 2021? Specifically, what if my income went up a lot in 2021, right? But that was the anomaly. What do I do then? I'm going to spend some time talking about that before we punch out tonight. And that'll be one of my last talking points for a slide here. Okay. Now, the only thing that I'll flag in terms of student income, students, if they make less than $7,000, it's a little bit higher than that. It's more like 7,600. But if they make less than this threshold, it's not considered at all, right? It's not baked into the formula at all. Once we get above this $7,000, that's when we start. It starts to get baked into the formula at a pretty decent clip, basically about 50%. Okay, so if your kid made 10 grand, the first 7,000 wouldn't count, but that additional 3,000, half of it, the colleges are going to say can be used towards college each year. Okay, now that's your kid would have to be, really industrious to start to get up to those numbers, and if they are industrious, they should. We're not telling anybody that the kid should stop working, make less money. No, if they're industrious kids, make as much as you can. I'm talking to business owners that might put their kids on salary and pay them a decent salary. Great tax strategy, but this is where you would want to say, does it make sense to do during these college years? Maybe not. We'd have to look at that specific situation, but that's something that we would want to address here. So what I'm going to do and what I'm showing here is our platform that I alluded to earlier. Again, it's mycap.collegeaidpro.com. And this is an actual family up in my neck of the woods, right? This is a family of four from my town. I live in a community called Beverly, Mass, just north of Boston. And this is an average family, average income, average assets, family of four. They got one in that's a senior, class 2023, and then one that's a sophomore, class 2025. Okay. Now, for those of you that have already done this program, the first thing that you see staring you in the face is these EFCs at the top of the page, right? What do these colleges, what do these formulas say that you can pay? What's your minimum amount they're expecting you to pay on an annual basis? Okay. And again, that doesn't mean that's all we pay. That's just kind of the foundation in that need-based formula. Now, the reason why I held this back is because I didn't want to confuse things further, right? When we're first hearing this new terminology, I like to do it in bite-sized pieces, but there's actually 3 different EFCs. Any given college can use one of 3 different EFCs, right? Just about every public school uses the Federal EFC. A lot of the private colleges, you heard me mention Boston College, same with Boston University, same with NYU, same with, I went to Stonehill College up here. These are schools that use the institutional methodology. And then there's a small group of schools The most competitive from an admission standpoint schools, they use something called the Consensus EFC. Every Ivy League school, the Amhersts, Dukes, Stanfords of the world, MIT, right, use this methodology. So the one interesting thing is that this institutional methodology is through the roof, wildly higher than these other two. The reason being is that this particular family they're homeowners. They have a lot of home equity. And so that's what's driving this number here, whereas this federal EFC doesn't look at home equity. And most of these schools don't put much emphasis on it. So just something that's kind of worth pointing out here. But what I want you to focus on is the fact that, and again, this isn't a wonky situation. This is, again, your average income, average savings family. In most cases, the sticker prices of colleges, the rack rate, is irrelevant. The cost of attendance, right? It's irrelevant. This family, Massachusetts family, is going to, if the student is, and this is a smart kid, if they're fortunate enough to get into Amherst College, it's going to cost them less money than to go to the in-state state school at UMass Amherst, right? State schools in general, they don't come with the same sticker price, but they don't do much in the way of discounting, if any. This kid's also interested in going to California. I'm telling you right now, UC schools, specifically the state schools, and this is, I'm not picking on the UCs here. This is most state schools. Again, they don't give that much money, and they're approaching private school type sticker prices, right? And then you have this interesting deal where in NYU, almost the exact same rack rate as Amherst College, but they're just not that generous. They don't give that much need-based financial aid. They also consider home equity. So that's what I want to flag here. I don't want you getting focused on what the sticker prices of these colleges are. I want you to focus on what are you going to pay, right? How much are these schools actually going to cost your family? Because that's the biggest factor here, right? So what I think is kind of a fun and useful exercise to do is put a couple of colleges in the chat or the Q&A, throw some colleges, put some ones that you guys are going to be applying to or some of the top choices, or at least some of the schools that you're talking about at home. Put those in the chat and let's pop some schools in here right now, and we'll look at how generous or not they are. Okay, so let's look at Fordham. Okay, so I can see that I'm going to get a discount at Fordham, but it's not going to be too much, right? And then we can take a closer look why. So if I pick any school here and I kind of drill down on it, we can say, okay, here's the cost of attendance. This kid, smart kid, again, they're going to get some in the way of scholarship, some in the way of grants, but schools won't give both. They won't stack financial aid. They'll give the highest of the two numbers, right? So we can see, that's why we're getting down to this net cost here. And then for any college you put in there, you'll see that we have every single scholarship that school offers. And we're really good at projecting, well, how much, if any, is this kid actually going to get, right? Another school that I saw in here was Columbia. So Columbia, I'm willing to bet is going to be a relatively affordable school for this family, and it is. Right now, why is that? Why is Columbia, why are we getting a $60,000 discount, right? Or thereabouts? What is the why here? Well, we can see that they are a school that uses this consensus methodology, and they basically meet 100% in need. So if your EFC is 24,000 based on this formula, that's what you pay, 24,000, right? Really, really no more than that, or very little more than that. Okay. Now, what's interesting to note, though, is that scholarships do not exist at Columbia or any of the Ivy League schools. There's not one kid walking around at Columbia that's there on a scholarship, right? Let's look at one more here. Let's look at Northeastern in my backyard here. Both my parents went there. My grandfather and great grandfather, but none of us kids applied there. So Northeastern, again, heck of a lot higher than some of these other schools. Well, why is that? I know why, but let's see if you guys can kind of figure this one out here. If we're putting this together, well, if we look at their kind of, I like to call this their business model. When we click on financial aid, they meet a high percent of need, just like Amherst, right? Just like Columbia, but they're going to be looking at home equity, and they're going to be looking at a lot of home equity. They use a different model here. So that's why same sticker price, same amount of need-based financial aid generosity, but they have a different business model, right? So that's, again, I'm telling you guys all more than you need to know right here. I just want you focused on the net cost, and kind of the why is less important. I just want to add some additional context that hopefully is helpful in terms of how the heck this whole thing works, right? And then if we have some time at the end here, we'll put some more schools in there. But what I'd encourage you to do is go ahead and do it yourself right now, as you're following along here. Next thing I'll spend a few minutes on is merit-based aid, right? I mean, just by way of your zip codes, I just know a percentage of you, there's no magic wand that we could wave. You're not getting need-based financial aid. And I think one of the many broken parts of this system as a whole are these families that we like to call bubble families. And they're these families that, at least how we talk about it internally, that they're not eligible for need-based financial aid according to the formula, but it's insanity to expect that they can pay $80,000 a year for college, right? And it's, we're a family of 5 that's living in Bergen County that makes $300,000 a year. And and I'm sure you're very grateful for that. But even though you have 3 kids and you have your mortgage and you pay your taxes there, they're still going to say that you can pay $80,000 a year for college, right? And I don't think you would agree with that because you're probably not in a position to be saving a ton of money if you're, somewhere in that, realm that I just described here. So where can I get discounts? Right? Because one big takeaway for me, and something again that I say every day, is that you can I'm just telling you right now, I've been doing this for long enough. You can go have an amazing experience as the student. You can graduate with incredible opportunities. There's more paths there than the one that costs $350,000, right? I'm not getting on my soapbox saying it's not worth paying a premium at certain schools. I think oftentimes it is, and we'll kind of look at that in a minute. But there's we got to be thinking about ROI here, right? And I'm just telling you, there's more than one way to have an awesome end result and an awesome 4 years. And it doesn't have to be to the tune of $85,000 a year, right? So obviously merit-based aid is where we want to start, where we're going to find scholarships. And I'll kind of show you how we do that within the platform in a minute here. But we do want to flag that not everybody has scholarships, right? Again, I want to reemphasize, it doesn't matter how gifted your kid is. And I know there's a lot of gifted kids at Northern Valley, but there's not one kid that's walking around Harvard, that's walking around Dartmouth, that's walking around Tufts, that's walking around Williams or Amherst, that's there on a scholarship. Scholarships do not exist there, right? If they're not paying full sticker price, it's because they're getting need-based financial aid, okay? Something else I want to highlight here, we want to apply to competing colleges. This is especially an important strategy if you are not eligible for need-based aid. So for example, I was just actually talking to a representative from Boston University, and we were having this conversation that we know well and they know well too. And that is if you want to go to BU, if you have a kid that is determined to go to Boston University, and you came up here and you visited Boston University and Northeastern, you hated Northeastern, you loved BU. If you're my client, I am going to make you apply to Northeastern too. I know you have no intention of applying to Northeastern. I'm just going to use that offer letter that you get from Northeastern, and I'm going to give it to BU, and I'm going to say you at least have to match this, beat it, etc. if you want us to go there. That is not the tone I'm going to use. Okay, that is I'm being a tough guy for a second there, but that is actually what it's going to be. The tone is going to be, you're our number one choice. We're dying to go there. However, we got this offer from a school that we believe that that we understand that you probably compete with. And we are too. We're torn. These guys gave us $10,000 more if we can't at least match that. That's a deal breaker for us, right? And again, it's not hardball, do this or else. It's an ask. In order for us to make this happen, we would have to come up to a price that was more within this range. Which again, I'll spend a little bit more time talking about when we when we close out here. Again, when we're talking specifically about merit-based scholarships, what I like to do here is what we can do and how we leverage the platform here is if I go to this advanced school search, and this is something that, again, you'll want to do this however you do it. I think this is the easiest way, but this allows us to say, okay, we're not eligible for need-based financial aid, but go show me some colleges that are close to home, if you want to be close to home, that are, you know, smaller schools that have my kid's major, if we know it, you don't have to. And then I want to sort that criteria based on just who's going to give you the most in scholarship dollars, right? And I can kind of rank order schools that way. And I might say, okay, well, Wheaton College, maybe it wasn't on the list, but if they're going to give me 40 grand, you know, that's interesting. Or maybe my kid liked, you know, UVM, but they're a state school that's not going to give much money. But St. Michael's is a beautiful little private college up there in Burlington that's going to give me 30 grand off. That, you know, maybe we add that to the list. You know, or we could just sort based on, you know, based on who's going to give the most in financial aid if we are eligible for financial aid, right? So that's another, you know, kind of an important way to leverage technology here. Okay. And so I'm getting some questions here, which actually is a great segue. Like, what do we mean when we're saying ideal versus caution versus good, right? Now, this is really, to me, the ROI part of the conversation, right? You know, this is never going to be an exact science. There's always going to be an element of subjectivity and imperfection in here. But the idea is that this is a 4-year expense, right? And maybe more than that if we have more than one kid. But what we want to do is we want to look at what's this school going to cost over 4 years, not just one, but overall 4 years. Okay. What is what we call your college pre-approval? So part of our onboarding process that you went through, if you've done this before, is we ask you about how much can you come up with per year for college, or are you willing to come up with per year for college, right? And again, what we call our college pre-approval. We want to take that pre-approval, deduct it from this 4-year net cost, and see what, if anything, the delta is going to be. Okay. And then if we take a little bit of a closer look there, this is how we kind of judge ROI. The dream scenario, no loans, right? That's the dream scenario. Okay. And it's very hard to do, and it's uncommon. We expect families to have to borrow. And as a matter of fact, and I probably won't have time to get into it tonight, we'll recommend that even families that don't have to borrow, there's sometimes a strategy to borrowing a little bit just under the kid's name, just so they can establish credit. And there's an element of strategy there. But if the student borrows up to $27,000 a year, that's still a home run. Okay. Because I don't care where you go to school, what you're majoring in. If you just take that number doesn't come out of thin air. Everybody that completes the FAFSA, every student is going to be eligible to borrow up to $27,000 over the course of 4 years. Great terms, great rates, fixed. If your kid borrows 27 grand through this program, you guys hit a home run. Okay. The next kind of threshold is a student that borrows up to the amount they're expected to make their first year after they graduate from college, right? So in other words, if you're going to be an engineer, we're okay with you borrowing up to 65 grand over the course of 4 years, because that's your expected salary rebate when you graduate, right? Of course, there's a lot of other variables there, but you know, high level. But if you're going to be a social worker, right, then the math doesn't make sense if you borrow 65 grand. We got you around that 40 to 45 range. So anytime that the amount you're going to have to borrow is above that expected first year salary over the cost of 4 years, we just want you to pump the brakes. We're not saying don't apply there. We just want you to go into this thing with eyes wide open. So that's what we're talking about here when we show, you know, what's ideal, right? Is no loans versus let's pump the brakes versus this is a good outcome. Okay. And what we found, if you're trying to, and I encourage you to, if you're trying to bring your kid into this conversation and have them understand kind of the magnitude of the investment, I'm not talking about scare them. I don't want to, you know, I'm just talking about understanding, you know, one of their first big major adult decisions here, especially from an investment standpoint. I think this is a great place to live. And what we found, this was by design here. I don't want to take credit for it, but I will. But what I found over my years of experience, kids could not, and I was the same way. I'm surprised it took me so long to get here. They don't know the difference between borrowing 47,000 versus 186 versus 97. But what we found to resonate with them is that if we say, listen, if you borrow $186,000, okay, that's, again, I might as well have said 20 bajillion, whatever. But here's what your first monthly payment is going to be upon graduation. And here's what a reasonable expectation is for your take home pay based on the major, based on the school. Like, does that delta make sense to you? Or even this is oftentimes enough. Like I teach at a local charter school here, you know, and this is something we spend a lot of time on. And I'll ask the kids like, hey, who's got a job? Everybody raises their hand. Okay. Who makes $2,074 a month? Every hand goes down. Right. So this starts to be like, damn, I want to go to California, but like, let's be kind of crystal clear about what we're signing up for here. So hopefully that's helpful. And I think it's just a great way to look at it from, take some of the emotion out of an otherwise very emotional roller coaster process as you guys are learning every day in real time, I'm sure. So okay, so hopefully that was helpful in terms of getting our arms around, you know, need-based financial aid, merit-based financial aid, how the whole thing works, and if you're on the platform, you're getting an idea of exactly where you all stack up. Okay, and let me just get back here and making sure I try to get to some of these questions too. The financial aid application process itself, we're going to spend some more time. Actually, I'll make sure that I'll try to get in here before tonight, or we'll do it as a part of the follow-up. But next week on, actually, let me just grab it here because it'll be helpful. But next week on 10/6, right, we are doing kind of like a line-by-line deal through the FAFSA, through the CSS profile, you know. It's not the most electric, entertaining content, but I think there's some value there just to make sure that you are, you know, like I talked about, you're not making any of these common missteps, right? That are just can end up costing you a lot more money than it needs to. So what I'm doing right now is I'm popping in the chat the registration link. If you want to register for that webinar, which is next Thursday, 10/6 at 7, we get super granular, you know, in actually navigating these forms. So I'm popping in that in there, register if you want, but I want to plant some seeds. First of all, you can't access these financial aid applications until October 1st. Technically, I will let you know, the College Board is not going to be pleased with me sharing this, but the CSS profile is already accessible. Okay, they did a soft launch, so if you want to start getting on the CSS profile now, this is not public knowledge. I guess it is now to an extent, but the CSS profile is accessible now. The FAFSA comes out October 1st. Our little birdies tell us they're going to do a soft launch the day before this year for the first time. So we will see. Don't bother getting on the financial aid applications, specifically the FAFSA. Don't bother getting on the FAFSA the first couple of days of October. It will break. It's been about 10 years strong that it's, you know, breaks for the first multiple days. Don't drive yourself nuts. The earliest deadline is November 1st. Okay, doesn't matter if you get in October 1st or November 1st. You just have to hit the priority deadlines. Let me say that there's only a November 1st deadline for a very small percentage of colleges, and only if you apply early action or early decision. So for most of you, that November 1st isn't even going to apply. But with that, it's on you to know what your colleges require, when they require it, how they require it. Everybody requires the FAFSA. A lot of these, you know, over 200 colleges, a lot of them tend to be these popular private colleges, all the ones that we've mentioned so far, in addition to the FAFSA, require the CSS profile. All the deadlines are different, and they're not going to communicate that with you, right? You are on your own. We like to say yo-yo. You're on your own to figure out what's required, when it's required, how it's required. So you have to go on to each of the colleges' financial aid websites to see, you know, for the schools that you're applying to, what's the deal, right? Now, again, you guys are going to get these slides as a follow-up. And you can tune in with us, next week. This is all we do, right? I'm doing stuff like this almost every day with my team. And so, just stay tuned and we'll help you through this stuff the best that we can. But again, these are just kind of the websites, which you now know you can access in the next couple of days. Everybody's going to require the FAFSA. A lot of these private colleges, the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA. Now, the CSS profile, right? Couple of talking points here. We call this is a FAFSA on steroids, right? This is several hundred questions, super invasive, a little bit sneaky in my opinion. There's some nuanced questions like what can you pay for college per year, right? It's got parents losing sleep going, I don't want to say too little, I don't want to say too much, right? It's, and I can't really sugarcoat it, but it's just something that we got to trudge through if we want to be considered for need-based financial aid. And some colleges, even if we want to be considered for scholarships, right? NYU, for example, you got to complete the financial aid application, even if you want to be considered for merit-based scholarships, right? That's not every school, but we want to be aware of the colleges that we're thinking about applying to. Even if we weren't thinking of applying for financial aid, do we need to do it to be considered for merit-based scholarships, right? That's an important thing that we are always trying to flag. Let me pause and talk for a minute about divorced and separated or separated families, right? Basically 2 household families. How does this whole thing work? Obviously, we have another layer of complexity there. And again, I'll go back to, it depends on the school. So you got to know exactly how the colleges that you're applying to, how do they handle this? But let me at least provide some high level guidance that's applicable at, most kind of groupings of colleges. Now, every college is going to require the FAFSA. And the only information that goes on the FAFSA is that of the custodial parent or parents. So whoever the kid lives with, right? Or whoever the kid lives with the most, if there's, if it's relatively equal, whoever the student lives with the most, and only that information goes on the FAFSA. It's as if the non-custodial parent doesn't exist, right? Even though it's the biological parent. If that custodial parent is remarried, so now there's a step parent in the scene, they are treated basically like the biological parent because the FAFSA only cares about the custodial household. So it is the biological parent and step parent combined information that goes on the FAFSA, still as if other non-custodial but biological parent doesn't exist, right? So that's how it works at colleges that only require the FAFSA. For most colleges that require the CSS profile, in addition to the FAFSA, they want both households to fill that out, right? So the custodial household completes the CSS profile. The non-custodial household also completes their own CSS profile. You won't see each other's information, right? They are separate applications that get sent to those schools. So that's kind of how it's done. And if there's only one parent in the scene at all, there's only one parent's information that's considered. Now, if you are a parent that is divorced or separated, and there is another parent that's still alive, but they're not, you don't know where they are, or they're refusing to participate, or any number of things, you need to communicate that directly with the colleges, and they're going to each, kind of handle that differently, depending on the situation here. Now, let me just kind of give you a sneak preview, and I'm going to actually grab a link in the that I put in this Word doc here, if I can get around my Zoom stuff and grab it here. So there's some big FAFSA changes that are coming down the pike, and there's some good news here. There's going to be more resources for families that need it most, right? We can all agree that's a great thing. The FAFSA itself is going to get easier. It's a reducing in questions, going from 100 plus down to about 35. That's great. We all love that. There's some major bad things going on, and I'm just going to focus on one tonight. And anytime I get kind of the opportunity to get on my soapbox, this is what I focus on. Right now, there's a baked into the formula is a discount if you have multiple kids in college. So whether that's twins, or if you have, like the family we've been looking at, kids that are 2 years apart that will overlap for 2 years, that's baked into the formula. They say, okay, you have the same income, the same assets, the same resources. We have 2 kids in school at once. We're going to basically split it in half, and they they'll if your family contribution is 20,000, Once you have 2 kids in school, each of their family contributions will be 10,000, right? This law that the Department of Education and Congress passed is getting rid of that. So effectively, for most kids that are going to have multiple kids in school, the cost of college is going to double. You know, and I'm generalizing a little bit, but that's not just a scare tactic. I believe the sentence I said to be true. So I started a petition after I got done bitching about it for a while, and I did bitch for a while. We actually started a petition, and we've started to get in the room with some decision makers, but all the feedback is until you get 100,000 signatures, there's not much we can do. Once you get 100,000 signatures, there's a world in which, you know, we can help you, you know, maybe make an impact here. So we've just been doing this on a grassroots level. We're up to like 65,000 signatures. I put the link in the chat. Please sign the petition. Please share it. You know, it's going to be massively impactful, negatively impactful for a lot of families, and obviously maybe your own if you have more than 1 kid in school at once. So, you know, hard to believe when as prices kind of continue to increase at such insane levels each year, they're making changes that are like this, right? So you know, I'm not going to spend too much time here because we will in fact do complete presentations just on this topic. We'll do a couple in and around the holidays as folks are getting early acceptances back with their award letters. And then we'll focus most in and around the middle of March when the most of the financial offers come through. But basically, you know, once we get an award from these, you know, from these colleges, we get our financial offer, so to speak. How do we go back and get more, right? There's a method to that madness. We're pretty good at it. We have a lot of currently employed financial aid counselors on our staff, right? The director of Harvard Medical, he's on our team. The director of MIT Financial Aid Sloan School of Management, he's on our team. You know, so and those are just a few of the folks that help us specifically with this piece of it, right? How do we go back to schools and get more money? And it's very helpful to have folks that are on that side of the fence and have been doing it for a heck of a long time be able to advise us and you know, families in our ecosystem. But these are a couple of big ones, right? We want to bring color to it, right? That, you know, they had no idea that you know, the best day of our lives was when we got the acceptance letter. The worst day was when we got, you know, the financial aid offer, right? This is when we want to make sure that we're competing, that we have competitive colleges so we can leverage those, you know, against one another. Those are a couple of the big things that we want to make sure that we're doing. So I'm going to answer some questions, but first I want to talk about a few ways that you all can leverage us, you know, kind of moving forward here. And one of them, let me get you a few things. This one is something that we do as of now. We do it every other Monday, but we were starting to do this. We're starting to do this 2 to 3 times a week. We haven't made the firm decision yet, but 2 or 3 days a week. You know, and again, right now we do every other week. We do live office hours, right? So it's basically one of us, right? Myself, someone on my team, we kind of rotate where we just have, we show up similar to this, and we just have kind of a grab bag of Q&A, you know, bring whatever questions you have to us, and let's talk about it. Let's help you out. You know, let's give you some recommendations, or, you know, answer whatever pain points are there. So if you register for those office hours, you'll just get reminders that, hey, here's when we're doing it. Here's when they are. And again, we're switching from once every other week to 2 to 3 days a week. So it'll be more frequently. Okay. Now you may have noticed kind of within our platform that some of it, the free version, a component of it is ring fenced, right? So for example, we only let you put 3 schools in if you're on the free version. We don't have our private scholarship database in the free version, and we don't have that advanced search feature. So when we let you go sort by, you know, scholarships or whatever, you know, that's not in the free version. Okay. Now, if you are a family that is on free and reduced lunch, okay, just let us know, right? You just got to send us an email and we underwrite the cost. Right. So if you're a free reduced lunch, or you just say, so to have all the bells and whistles, access to all the bells and whistles of the platform, it's $149. Now, by the way, let me just kind of interrupt myself. Northern Valley does not endorse us. We don't partner with them. There is no relationship outside of, hopefully Matthew brings us in to say these guys know what they're talking a little bit and about when it comes to financial aid. So let me just be explicit about that, right? But for those that want to, the full version of the platform, it's $149. The other thing you might consider is if it's $299, and that includes access to the platform for a year and an hour with one of us. So you get one-on-one live expert with myself or any one of our experts. So kind of two things there. Number one, like I said, if you are free and reduced lunch family, or you're a family that says we would love to have access, but we can't afford the $149, just write to us and we'll get you on there for free. The other thing is too, if just use this, if you do decide to upgrade, use this coupon code NValley20 and you'll get 20% off, right? So if you get on the platform, it'll be $119, or if you do the hour, $239. I think that I don't know, but I think this runs out after 24 hours, the coupon code. I'm sure you can write into us later if you missed that, and we'll figure it out. But anyways, it saves you a couple bucks if you want to get on there. I personally recommend you probably go for the hour, because it's a pretty good deal. If you think you want an hour at any point over the next year, it's usually a good investment. But we got a lot of questions about how do you interface with us after tonight's presentation. Those are kind of your options. Again, just office hours, our other webinars, and if you want to get on the platform, use one of those coupon codes, which will also let me put it in the chat too, and you will get it. You'll get it in the follow-up email as well. And then we have a more comprehensive service, right? And you can just write into us of what that's all about. If you just, we call it, wake me when it's over. If you want somebody to just drag you through this whole thing, that's an option we have, but obviously the price point's a little bit higher and all that. So, I mean, hopefully that's, I'm always trying to walk the line between providing as much information as possible without being too overwhelming and too quick. So that's kind of our deal. But it looks like I got to a lot of these questions, but happy to get to any others where we still have a few minutes here. Please, please write in, or if Matthew, if you got anything you want to comment.
Matt, there was a question that you might have, I was trying to think if you've said it, but how far in advance, a parent asked, would you recommend if you were going to sign up?
Yeah, I mean, we say late stage kind of college planning is our sweet spot, which is freshman year of high school, right? That's obviously your seniors, obviously now is the time, but I think where we can start providing tangible value is when you have a freshman in high school. Obviously, the closer you get to college, the more kind of on fire your hair is, and the more pressing questions and all that, but we can provide legitimate value. Not to say we can't provide any value if you have a younger student, but you can probably hold off till your student is a freshman in college. Thanks. Yeah, and like I said, guys, everybody's going to get the recording tomorrow. Everybody will get the slide deck tomorrow, and just again, hopefully you'll know where to find us with any additional questions as you guys navigate this whole thing. And best of luck. I know it's a beast, right? It is a beast, and you guys are absolutely in the throes of it. You will get through it. It will happen. Yeah, we're here to support you in any way we can if you choose to engage us in any way.
We should probably add that we invite Matt to visit us usually twice a year. So usually we'll have a spring update if possible, so that people could hear an update later on in the year. So keep an eye out for that. We'll get information out. We usually capture the recordings if we can, and we do put them out in our college information resources page that we send out to parents.
Yep, 100%. We'll be happy to do it as always. And then again, like I said, we'll have a couple other things throughout the year. Matthew, you can decide if it makes sense to invite parents to any of these other nights or not, or whatever. But of course, we always love having you. You guys are always invited, and always looking forward to continuing the partnership. And we appreciate you guys.
Great. And we had a couple of visitors from other surrounding schools and areas, so that's great too.
Shout out Fort Lee. Sorry,
that's very nice. Thank you.
No love to Sorry, I've been keeping all the love to Northern Valley here, but shout out to Fort Lee.
That was nice, very nice. Kate, thanks for joining us from Fort Lee. And some other folks I may not have seen in particular, but thanks again, Matt, for your information and the resources. Look forward to, having you join us, in the spring again.
Yes, sir. Always great to see you, Matthew. Go Irish, buddy.
Go Irish.
All right.